Alright, hi everyone, Paul Micallef here from Autism from the Inside. Today I am on location at the Asia Pacific Autism Conference here in Perth. So a bit of a different video today. I've been here for 3 days, so I'm going to share a bit of an update from my personal perspective, a bit of a shit sandwich of what's good, what could be better, and my reflections on the whole thing. So yeah, let's see how we go today. So I'm very excited to be here. Actually pretty tired this morning, just after 3 days of such a big international conference. It's actually been an amazing experience to finally have such a big event post-COVID. The last APAC I went to was in 2018 in Singapore, and I've heard that this is the biggest one, says people trying to avoid the camera in the background. Thanks. The biggest one ever at over 1,500 people from 30 different countries. So that has been really exciting. Lots and lots of energy, lots and lots of people, lots and lots of incidental communication and conversations. I found one of these little communication cards, which weirdly were not standard in the pack, but thankfully some of the exhibitors were sharing those types of resources to help people communicate. So let's start with some of my reflections on the really good, exciting stuff that I've seen in the last couple of days. And then I will get into some pretty heavy criticism. Not everything has been great. And then I'll share my reflections on the whole thing at the end, because there's so much advocacy to be done, so much more we can be focusing on that I feel like I've learned from this space. So let's start with the really positive stuff. This has been a fantastic event overall, just in terms of attendance and vibe and organization. Having run my own events, I know it's a lot of investment and time and energy that is put in advance, and then you cross your fingers, and then you hope you sell tickets, and then you hope everything's going to go okay. And the organization side of this event, having so many people here and doing a fairly good job of managing food and accommodation and talks and information and all of those kinds of things, that's a huge job. That's a huge investment in advance by the host organization, Autism WA here. So yeah, good job, guys. You just cannot replicate this type of experience without that enormous level of investment and work in advance just to get the people in the door. So I really wanted to just acknowledge that. It's not quite once in a lifetime, but it's not an everyday experience. There's a reason that this type of huge international event only happens every couple of years. So the opportunity to visit Perth has also been really nice. Perth is fairly hot and dry during the day, especially at this time of year. And so I've been going for a nice walk in the morning, especially because there's a 3-hour time difference between Melbourne, which means I can wake up at 5:30 a.m. and it's like 8:30 back home, have a nice fresh walk, and then come in to the very busy, it's just getting really busy in here, and people are saying hi and everything. That's fine. Yeah, it's lots and lots of people, lots and lots of energy, but that's sort of part of the process and one of the best things about it. So probably the biggest advantage for me, what I've liked about it the most, is just saying hi to people in the lunch queue and seeing where they're from and seeing what they want to get out of it and hearing their reflections on everything. And if I'm honest, and I'll get to this in a minute, like I didn't even attend half of the actual speaking stuff because it's a lot, and I actually really value the one-on-one nature of actually having a conversation with a person. There's a lot more feedback there. So having a good mix of that, of content from experts summarizing research that, you have to be an expert it just takes so much time to summarize that, versus just meeting lots of different people and expanding horizons in a really personal sense. Okay, so that's the good stuff in the shit sandwich. Let's move on to the more average things, and then I'll get into a bit of criticism and then some reflections. So one of the things that I've appreciated is the space in general has been really nice with the hotel. They've definitely picked a nice venue for it. The quiet room is actually very central. So there's the main hall here where most of the keynotes are, and the quiet room is literally 5 meters across the corridor from that. So you don't need to go to some like dungeon down the hall to have a break. That's really nice. You may have noticed I called it a quiet room. That's because that's the official name, and they clearly did not get much guidance in terms of the sensory aspects that were not just the noise. So it's actually not too bad, but in terms of the lighting and some of the other things, I think they probably could have done a little bit better than simply asking their one autistic employee to come and take a look. So it was actually kind of funny. In the email, it says, "We have a quiet room that was designed in consultation with our organizing committee." Like, okay, so your organizing committee designed the quiet room. Great, fantastic. Did you consult anyone else? Anyway, overall, that has been significantly better than some other conferences I've been to in the past. But at the same time, that was like 5 years ago, 6-7 years ago now, back 2018. Wow, that's a long time. And I happen to know, especially if you've been to my summit, that there are some people doing much, much, much better in that space. However, overall, really nice to have a nice space to go to and also meet other autistic people in that space as well. Okay, my arm is getting tired, so I'm swapping sides. And now to probably the biggest criticism of the whole thing, which is essentially also the most emotional for me. My community that I work with every day is the autistic adults who, for the most part, do not have a serious intellectual disability. And we are just not represented here at all, which I feel is really sad. It's 2025, and I can't believe I'm saying the nothing about us without us kind of message, because surely that message has already been said a lot of times. I mean, it's a massive international conference. You'd think there would be more than one autistic speaker. There is one autistic keynote speaker, which is a lot better than 0, but there could have been a lot more. I mean, I literally just ran an event with 25 world-renowned expert autistic speakers. So that's one thing. The other thing that's also the flip side of that is, because autism here seems to be very, very tied to intellectual disability, weirdly, the other group that seems to be left out are the autistic adults with very, very high support requirements who do not have an intellectual disability. I'm thinking of people like Patrick Saunders, who was on my summit just gone, right? Who is a speller, right? He doesn't speak, he spells to communicate. One of his core messages is, "I do not have an intellectual disability. I have a serious disability that needs a lot of support, but please do not assume that I have an intellectual disability." And we had I just have to mention 2 of the keynote speakers here that I feel like deserve a mention. So there was one yesterday on profound autism, basically asking the question of, should we be creating this new category to help the research separate out autism a little bit, so that it's not just one big bucket, we kind of get a little bit more specific. And I'm like, okay, that's an interesting question. But then by the time he gets to the end, one of the criteria that he lists for what profound autism means is essentially having an IQ of less than 50, which just means that anyone with very, very high support needs who does not have an intellectual disability gets excluded from that. So that's really, really hard to hear. So that's one side, and then there's just the lack of lived experience speakers in general is really just emotionally hard to listen to. Lots and lots of very interesting research. Research is fantastic, but without the complement of the lived experience, that's just really personally difficult. And then, okay, one last thing, and then I'll stop with the shit part of the shit sandwich. The very, very first keynote basically talked about severity, like, of autism, and measuring that on a linear scale and giving people a severity score. And when I first heard that, I thought, oh, surely you mean like measuring individual skills and giving them a score of like, well, how is your social skills, or how is your, adaptive functioning, or how is something else. But as it went on, he made it really clear that he meant a severity score overall, like literally how autistic are you? And that's one of the biggest advocacy things that I'm trying to share with people online. You may have seen lots of infographics from so many other advocates as well. It's a spectrum, not a continuum. And we have this world-renowned researcher speaking to 1,500 people, reinforcing the idea that you can be more autistic or less autistic. Okay, really challenging stuff like that. So I have my arms back. I have a volunteer who has helped me to film, which is fantastic. What was I saying? I think I was saying how some of the presentations were a little bit challenging in terms of very, very medically focused and reinforcing some stereotypes and myths that advocates have been trying to dispel for some time, especially this you can be more autistic or less autistic thing. On the plus side, that's where I was going. On the plus side, when I talk to the next person, in the lunch queue, almost everyone I've talked to, close to 100% of people I've talked to, have understood that already, and you can sort of vent a little bit, and everyone I've spoken to has been really just emotionally validating. So even though you might get an expert telling a room full of people something really challenging, as soon as I go out into the community again, suddenly I'm talking to a parent who is not autistic themselves, but still knows enough, because there has been enough advocacy in Australia at least, that it's just reassuring to hear that message has gone through. So that's really helpful. That's definitely my biggest feedback for the whole conference is it's an amazing effort to put on, but the one thing that we need is just more lived experience to complement the thing. In terms of my own reflections on the space, as you may have seen in my video last week, I'm seriously questioning, like, what is it that my presence is contributing to the conversation in general. And it has reminded me that a very, very large percentage of the world still needs to hear messages that our community feel like we've said it enough. And of course we need lived experience, and of course neurodiversity makes sense, and of course a strength-based neuroaffirming approach makes sense, and of course we should listen to autistic voices. However, there's still a huge amount of work to be done in that sense. So this is where I'm getting a little bit intellectual, but I kind of feel like if they didn't pitch that level of this is the research, this is the medical side, etc., maybe we wouldn't have gotten 1,500 people here, because that's the question that a lot of people in the community are asking. So there's a bit of a gap there, but I'm reassured that we can keep bridging that gap. So that's sort of my reflection on the whole thing. So I guess my main takeaway from an experience perspective is just noticing the absolute lack of focus on autistic adults without an intellectual disability, and along with that, certain other intersectionality things like race and culture, and especially LGBTQ kind of intersectionality is another thing that I've heard from several participants. You can just feel the lack of acknowledgement of those types of things. But overall, the real value, I think, is not necessarily in the official stuff. It's in all of the interpersonal connections. It's in sitting in the quiet room and meeting other autistic people. It's venting with people about the same challenges that we may have heard in the presentations. It's making new connections. It's all of those things that are impossible to create on purpose, but that naturally happen when you've got 1,500 people from all over the world here with nothing better to do for 3 days in a row. So I don't want to be too critical, because the fact that it's on at all is just a huge help, I think, overall. And maybe next time we can have a little bit more lived experience. So yeah, I might leave it there. I will probably think of other stuff to say later, but that'll do for now.